Political panel is next. Joining me now is Liberal MP Tim Wilson and Labor MP Anna Lee. Thank you both for your time. Let's begin on some pretty extraordinary accusations against Westpac. Tim Wilson, I know you pull no punches in this area. Do heads need to roll over this?
Well, we're all waiting for Westpac's response, but I would expect full accountability from the executive team as well as the board about this. We actually asked questions of Westpac and Brian Hartzer last week about their contingency for a flagged AUSTRAC investigation. To be frank, no one thought it would probably be as serious as the one that's come out, and I would be expecting a full package of accountability. And frankly, I think the Westpac needs to be clear. They need to be put up straight away what happened, why there's been systemic failures, and the pathway for redress. And as I said, that's going to be both a board and a CEO level.
And does that also need to include who's to blame and who's going to be held accountable for this? Who specifically?
Well, a key pathway of accountability is making sure that it's clear what's happened in a systems failure, but if there has been a negligence on the part of either the board, one of its committees, or the executive team, that is also made clear. And I think that's what, frankly, the Australian people should want. The allegations we've seen have been pretty, frankly, shocking. If Westpac isn't straight up about what's gone wrong, I think what they'll find is they'll get a lot more damage later down the track.
Anna Lee, your thoughts?
Oh, look, I agree with Tim on this. I think these are startling revelations coming out about Westpac, but of course not unprecedented, Tom, because we did have the situation with the Commonwealth Bank in 2018. So after the Banking Royal Commission and the revelations of the Banking Royal Commission, it's about time that the banks got their act together on this. I don't think people are aware of the extent to which financial crimes are contributing to transnational organised crime, to transnational organised terrorism, and of course in this case also child exploitation.
Now this is obviously to do with AUSTRAC, but APRA as well has been in headlines weighing up apparently supervised boardrooms. This is being called spying on them. We're not quite sure it's spying, but would that be something that might be looked at in a more comfortable light after these latest revelations, Anna Lee?
I'd want to see what the exact proposal is. Like, on the face of it, I'm not sure that it is the right move to make. It's highly resource intensive as well. I'd like to see what other options are in place to ensure that the banks are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and that the oversight agencies have the capabilities to conduct the oversight in ways that will allow that transparency to happen and enable the banks to have capacity in these areas. So I'm not so sure about sitting in on boardrooms and what that effect is going to have. I'd like to see some evidence that that's going to be a productive way of achieving the objectives.
Any thoughts on this, Tim Wilson?
Well, I'm also, like Anne, actually quite cautious on this proposal. I'd wait and see not just the evidence, but also for them to properly articulate the case about how they think it will be improved. One of the big critiques out of the Royal Commission that came was that the regulatory model that was taken by ASIC and APRA often blurred the lines between their relationship with financial institutions because they were often in the room and were too close to the decision making. I think there's still space for that model, but they shouldn't become captured by the organisations that they're designed to regulate, and they should always feel a sense of confidence about the need to blow the whistle, and I'm not sure that's going to be achieved under this proposal.
A lot of talk again this week about China, Anna Lee, and the plight of the Uyghurs has been laid bare in leaked documents. This is pretty rare from within the Chinese Communist Party. We know what's happening, but this confirms the policy. It's being called a cultural genocide by some. Australia has offered again polite condemnation. Does that do anything?
I think we should never, ever, ever be afraid of calling out human rights abuses where we see them. And like you said, Tom, we've known for quite a while now the plight of the Uyghurs in China, and we have had people call them out, and Australia has taken a strong stance against these human rights abuses. I think we need to continue to take a strong stance and continue to call China out on these human rights abuses. I think it's absolutely unacceptable.
Is it a strong stance to call it out in pretty diplomatic language and that's it? No other consequences? Would that be viewed as a strong stance if You're someone here with a Uyghur relative over in China?
Well, I don't know that the diplomatic way of doing things is always going to be the one that people who have a personal connection are going to accept as the way of doing things. But looking at the tools that are available to us, I think soft tools of diplomacy can be utilised in very effective ways. But that needs to be done within a framework in which we kind of marry together soft and hard tools of influence and consequences, I guess. I don't think we have that framework in place. It's a very difficult framework, a very difficult balance to get right. But I'd like to see us moving towards a framework that marries both soft and hard power tools to influence China and to be able to very much be able to call them out in stronger terms, at least, of for their human rights abuses in this space.
And how would you imagine that would be when you talk about hard power tools? What are you talking about?
Well, hard power tools are things that are coercive means. We don't really have a framework, and I don't think really there is a perfect framework that marries both hard and soft power tools. I mean, there's a lot of academic work being done in that area of kind of finding a balanced framework that uses both kinds of tools. And I think we need to take stock of all the tools that are available to us, both soft and hard power tools, and then move forward from that. But without a comprehensive framework, what we can do is continue to call out these human rights abuses.
It of course combines, from the perspective of looking at China, Tim Wilson, what's happening in Hong Kong, the court now not allowed to rule on face masks, hints of the army getting more involved. Politicians stop from visiting there unless they repent their views. It's pretty troubling over there.
It's extremely disturbing, and we shouldn't call it for anything but that. What we see in these leaked documents from the New York Times is that, frankly, what our worst fears were are being realised in the process, the pattern, the systemic nature of what the Chinese Communist Party has been doing in Zhejiang province. And yes, you're right, some of the activity in Hong Kong, and particularly the CCP not respecting the authority of their courts, is also very disturbing. This is why strong language is necessary. The reality is, actually, Australia is being quite assertive on these issues in the international realm and directly with China, and I think the government actually deserves compliments for that. The problem is that there isn't the same full force from some of our allies and our partners, particularly in the context of the United States. We know the US Congress has passed resolutions making it clear that they believe in the autonomy of the Hong Kong region. They're going to get an annual update for doing so, and I think we need other countries to be stepping up as much as we are.
And Donald Trump, is he failing in terms of his leadership on this?
Well, what we know is that the Congress has been stronger than President. That's an objective fact. And all I would urge anybody who wants to show moral courage or political courage and to make sure that they're standing up for, frankly, what is right and just, is to feel free and feel confident to stand up and speak out. You know, we all want the best for the people of China to be able to be successful and be prosperous, but that does not mean that we should turn a blind eye to, frankly, what are deeply disturbing revelations, deeply disturbing conduct in Hong Kong, and it's not what we should want for ourselves as much as anyone else in the world.
But what would you say about Donald Trump's leadership on this matter?
Well, obviously, I have taken a position which is quite strong on things like Hong Kong. The US Congress has taken a strong position as well. And, you know, I would encourage anybody to match up and to stand strong on these sorts of issues as well. Doesn't matter who the politician is. Only
got 30 seconds to go. Anna Lee, your thoughts on Donald Trump and his position on this?
I think it's disappointing. You know, I think that progressively over a number of years, the US has kind of retreated in its influence and its ability to influence countries that it would seek to influence. And China has risen as a major soft power across the world, in various areas across the world. I think I agree with Tim. We need a united front if we're going to confront China in a more powerful sense and in a more effective sense on these human rights abuses.
Well, we'll end on that relatively united front. Anna Lee, Tim Wilson, thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.